Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our Hungry for More podcast. I'm Robin Mons. This is Jennifer Winder, my friend and colleague. And we are here today to talk about food guilt. My goodness, people feel so guilty
Just got
about.
chills on the back of my neck.
I know I have felt guilty with food in the past. Jennifer has too. And this is actually one of the top three feedbacks we get from our clients when moving along in the program, especially by the end. They cannot believe how much guilt they've released. They're like, I don't feel guilty around food anymore. What? And it's not because they never eat the bad stuff ever again. And that's why the guilt's gone. No, it's because they've completely changed their mindset around food. So let's talk about food guilt. Number one, what are the natural ways? Because we do associate emotion and even biological responses to food. Okay. So for instance, when we eat, there is a sense of comfort. There's a need, a true survival biological need being met. And there's a sense of comfort in that. Now, sometimes the emotional, we tend to seek food out for comfort, and that's more of an emotional, response or running away from our emotions. But speaking to just that biological comfort of having that need met, that's natural. So is experiencing pleasure with food. We have the chemical in our brain, and when we eat something pleasurable, the dopamine has a response to that. So pleasure is a natural response to food. Also, on the flip side, if you truly are in a scarce environment where there is no food available, you're supposed to feel deprived or anxious to go get some, right?
Right.
So there are functions, emotional functions that we have with food that are natural. But what about guilt? What's the function for that? Like what purpose would guilt serve a human being trying to take care of themselves? Like, can you think of any?
No, I can't think of a purpose for it to be a good thing when it comes to that. I can see where it starts, though, and how it comes about. I mean, just the society we live in, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of that. And you and I were talking before we were recording this podcast, because sometimes when we're talking it through, it's like, yeah, I mean, it's super easy to see parents, me as a parent, right?
Yeah,
Rewarding my
same.
children. Okay, great report card at school. So what does the school do? They send home a certificate to go somewhere and get food. So it is a reward. But I think sometimes subconsciously in our heads as children, we're like, well, if I'm getting rewarded with food for this, then sometimes it's easy to see how guilt, like you've done something wrong, can be
When you don't earn
associated
it.
with food, right? Because it's
Yeah.
the opposite of, or labels that we give things like, this is a cheat meal, or I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
have a cheat day, because cheat is associated with doing something that's not okay.
Morally wrong.
Morally,
Yeah.
it has really nothing to do with the food, because the reality is you can eat the foods that you want and not be cheating and not
Right.
fall off the wagon that we hear people say, right? And so what happens is when we give them these moral labels, oh, I'm being so bad today, or you're being so good. I wish I could be good like that. And I'm talking about food on a plate, you guys, not human behavior, like food on a plate. People are saying, wow, you're being so good, or I'm just being so bad. I made bad choices today. Moral
Yep.
labels. And that's where I think the guilt comes from. I think it's those moral labels that we're giving different things.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you touched on some really important things. So when we're using food as reward, which totally I did, and in fact, I have to catch myself so much
Still
because
doing, right?
it's so easy to do, and it's like cheap, right, and fun, and those sorts of things. When the kids come home with something or we've experienced something, we want to go reward. But I'm really watchful of that. And there's other ways to reward, and that are just as valid and great. And I've had to kind of figure that out. But when we use it as a reward, and so we start to learn, when I'm good, when I do good, I'm rewarded with food, then it's automatically assumed when I do bad or when I am bad, I don't get food. How many of you were sent to bed without dessert because you didn't make the right choice, because you were in trouble? And so we've had both ends of the spectrum where it's been used for reward and for punishment. And so of course guilt is going to play a part in that.
Paul's right.
And it feels terrible, right? And the way that we're now doing it with ourselves, we might not say, you know what, you told a little white lie today, no treat for you. We don't do that with ourselves, but here's how we do it with ourselves. You ate bad yesterday, so you're not eating today, right? Or I ate so bad this weekend, I'm going to be off sugar all week long. And going off sugar to like cleanse and detox is not a problem, but notice the intention. Okay. It's one thing to say, you know what? you're so bad. You suck. You don't get
Yeah.
anything this week. That's a different motive for going off sugar than feeling like, you know what, I really feel my body asking me to kind of give it a break from some things. And so I'm going to honor my body and do that. They're big difference.
Right. And you know what? It's so funny because I was thinking about that. Last week, I got food poisoning pretty bad. And I was out for a few days. And then a couple days, my gut just has not felt the same since. So this week, I decided, you know what? I need to eliminate a few things that are harder to digest. That will help my gut get a little bit cleaner. And I feel great. Like, it's crazy how you can instantly just start feeling better. But that's different than saying, man, I need to clean up my act a little bit. That's it. The next 30 days, I'm not going to eat this and this. And now it's a punishment versus a tool to help my body heal itself. So at the end, you may have some of the same results, maybe because your mind plays a lot into those results. So you may or may not, but intention is everything. I believe when it comes to the guilt and all of that.
So true. When it comes to everything, because when your choice to go off something is because it comes from that feeling of punishment and guilt, those emotions are what is sponsoring your behavior with food. And think about the state of being you're in when you feel like you've been punished, you're not allowed to have it, and you haven't been good, versus, again, a loving decision to make of just like, oh, I just need to help my body kind of get itself right and regulated. And I know these certain foods are kind of harder on me. And so I'm going to give it a break. That's the energy that's sponsoring your behavior. And you're going to follow through with that. You're going to make the loving choices because the intention is so huge. Guilt is not a motivator. Guilt is not a useful motivator to make healthier choices. And that's kind of what we feel like we have to do. We have to feel bad so that then we can make better choices. And it doesn't work. We just dive off the deep end eventually within days.
Right. Well, and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about, the teenager where we try to guilt them into doing something. Does it ever work right? No, it doesn't. And so
they may even do it, but does it change them? Does it do what we were wanting to do for them? No. No. The other thing you said, okay, so with the moral thing, you touched on two things. You touched on moral labels, and then you touched on what you're choosing to eat. Like the choice of what to eat is not a moral choice. So I kind of want to dissect these and kind of take a look. So let's go into the moral labels. This is something that we love talking about with our clients, because when we teach them this and they start to release that, like, it's such a relief to them that we as their coaches are not judging and putting labels on what they're eating, that they don't need to come to a call and be like, I was bad, I ate this, right? And so moral labels are huge. Okay. So when we say it's fattening, it's bad for me, it's even saying things that like it's unhealthy. What are some of the other moral labels? Like junk food. Now, guilty pleasure, right? So you may hear us say this and be like, well, no, I mean, there are foods that are not healthy. But the thing is if you're labeling these foods with these really negative type of energy, and you're still eating those foods every once in a while, any moment you partake of that food, even if you're like, yeah, I really want it right now and I'd like some, when you eat the food that you have assigned a negative moral label, that negative moral label transfers to you.
Yeah.
Right. And then that's where it leads to feeling like you've made a moral decision that's wrong. Right. I ate that. I knew I shouldn't. I knew it would throw me off, and I did it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think those moral labels also take it to a place where then you just continue on.
Fascinating, isn't it?
I already did it. I might as well screw up some more since I've screwed up once. Before I fix the screw ups, let's just do whatever we can in that window of time.
I know, that's what is so mind-boggling about the mind, right? The reason why we're giving moral labels to things in the first place is to protect us from consuming them, right? If I know that's junk, if I know that's unhealthy, I'm going to make the better choice. How's that working for you, friends? Right? And then once we do eat the thing and that moral label transfers to us, we don't stop. It doesn't motivate us.
No, I've already been bad. I might as well get all my bad out of the way before I'm good again.
Right. Yes. And
I know that people are watching this going, yep. And if not with that, it's with something else. Right.
This is when people are like, are you in our brains? And it's like, well, we're in our own brains and we've had this experience. Like we're all swimming in the same water. We've had
from experience.
We've had the same environment. It's just, we woke up to these things a few years ago and said, oh, you know what? What if food is just a neutral existence, no matter on the spectrum of how many calories it is, how processed or unprocessed, any of it. As far as its moral value, okay, it may have a nutritional value. That's different. That's like the math.
Moral is a big zero.
Right? Moral value is a zero. There's no way for us to measure that. It's a neutral part of our existence that is there for your choosing. And so when you remove the label, then when you make the choice, you stop feeling like it's a moral decision that you have more guilt laden on top. You know, I had a client, I've seen it to this extreme where I've had a client and more than her, but specifically I'm thinking about one who was like, you know what? I feel guilty even when I choose not to eat it. I feel guilty that I even wanted something so bad for me. Why would I even want that if I know it's bad for me? And even if she would choose not to partake of it, she still felt guilty for even wanting it. What is wrong with you for wanting that? So this is a real thing. And I know she's not alone in this, but let's talk about how we heal this. We don't heal this. We think, well, as soon as I start eating clean and I rid myself of ever having the bad stuff, then I don't have to feel guilty anymore. Does that not feel like the biggest like mountain to climb impossible like thing, right? Yeah. So that's actually not what's going to fix it, because even when you clean up, you're going to have a moral compass with even the clean stuff. Like it will not stop unless you change the mindset. Okay. So just even changing the food and upgrading your food isn't going to rid you of guilt. It's going to be how you think. So we've kind of already hinted to the main solution. And what's that, Jennifer? The main solution to dropping it.
To literally drop all of the moral labels, all of them. Like, and catch yourself. Even somebody that we've been coaching for a while, we were on last night and she said, I made some bad, she goes, okay, I know they're not bad choices.
Yeah,
she caught herself and it was really great. But so we still have a tendency, maybe as you're working on that, it's going to take time. I mean, it will take time, but when you start catching yourself, I was so thrilled that she caught that.
Yes.
And so when you start catching that, that's when you go, okay, this is so interesting. So what do we do? I mean, Robin, how do you drop those moral labels? Because that's hard.
It is. And I'm actually thinking as you're talking about the rebuttal to that of like, well, if I see all food the same, what would ever motivate me to make the healthier choice? Right? Like, okay, well, are you saying that they're all the same value, so it doesn't matter what I eat and all that? And again, there's a difference between the nutritional value of something, and that's just the math. That's just our understanding of like how food interacts with us. Yeah.
And one of the things that I did, and I know you're going to talk a little bit more about this, but one of the things that I did, sorry, I'm spinning in my chair, is instead of giving foods moral labels, because there are certain foods I partake of sparingly, like I'm not sitting there eating them all day long. I stopped looking at things as good or bad, even good for my body or bad for my body.
Right.
I looked at them more as what's going to give me the more nutrient dense foods. So I've labeled a little bit like that. So it's not that I don't have the foods that are less nutrient dense. I just focus on the nutrient dense and occasionally have the other stuff. But I got rid of all the good or bad. And there's some days where I have days where I'm like, wow, I did not get nutrients today. I'm going to focus on my nutrients. But you know what I mean? So for me, it took all the negative out of it.
Right. That ruminating, all day after, like maybe you had intentions, you're like, okay, today I'm going to eat clean. I'm going to follow my program. And like, by the time you sent kids off to school, you'd already dipped into the goldfish and you grabbed some of last night's dessert and you're like, oh, and all day long, this guilt is on your mind. Right. So yes, when we remove the moral value, okay, then you're so much more empowered on making the decisions. This doesn't mean that you may want to prioritize the more nutrient dense foods and that sort of things. Like you can still guide your decisions based on how you want the food to interact with your body. But if you are someone like we are that wants the room for pleasure with food, right? That wants to eat foods at times for that pleasure function, you've got to drop those labels. And when you do that, you're going to be able to actually enjoy the pleasure of it, just like that's what you're wanting. It's not guilty pleasure is an oxymoron. You might enjoy it in your mouth, but you're going to feel guilty. What's the pleasure in that?
Let me ask you this then. When I'm eating a piece of cake, what is that to me?
Okay, good. Well, I know you know the answer, but yes, that's a good question, because this is what we go over. And this sounds so like
dumb. It sounds so simple.
It sounds dumb is probably the right word, because it's kind of like robotic, but this is how you neutralize it. And it works beautifully. You say, so when you're eating that cake and the old pattern of like, you probably shouldn't be eating this, or maybe just do one bite, like it kind of freaks out. That's when you correct it with cake is cake. Cake is cake. You don't have to justify, right? You don't go into any story. You don't argue with the mind. Well, I was good today and the scale went down and so I should have this cake. No, cake is cake. That's it. It neutralizes the energy around it. If you've made the conscious choice to eat some cake, then eat the cake. Why are we going to make this a moral thing for ourselves and feel terrible?
Yes. And broccoli is just broccoli. Don't
Yes.
get extra energy either, right?
Right. So good,
Like
right?
broccoli is just broccoli, because if broccoli is so good, then it's going to make anything less than broccoli so bad. So it's kind of neutralizing the energy with all the food. Like, this is food I'm putting in my body.
Good point. We tend to want to put ourselves on a higher moral ground when we're making, oh, I'm doing so good. I ate all the vegetables. And so we place that value on that. And it might feel good in the moment, but what that means is you're under constant threat to eat the other way and be bad.
Right. Your subconscious will take it the other way if you're anything. So it's like, I wish we should tag the other video, but we have a video that talks about the middle way, and it's the same thing with the food energy and the labels.
Right. You'll notice when you neutralize it, your behavior with that food is different. So when you are eating that cake and you're like, cake is cake, and I've made the choice, the neutral choice to eat this cake, you will savor it. You will enjoy it. You will actually also notice when you're kind of done with it.
Yep.
But when you're in that guilty energy, when you're in that moral place and you're just feeling ashamed of what you're eating and you're literally judging yourself while you're eating it, you're just like,
you got to hurry and eat it before your conscience kicks back in.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just like, let me just get away with it while I can. It's like this naughty girl in the corner trying to eat and before she gets caught, right? Before that voice gets too strong and stops you.
Right.
And so you're kind of trying to outrun that guilt, and that energy has you not only eating that cake and devouring it, but you might go for 2, 3, 4 more in that energy.
Yeah.
So calming it down by neutralizing it. And I love that. Cake is cake. Salad is salad. When your brain wants to be like, look at you, or wants to compare and being like, I'm choosing this at lunch and everybody else is choosing the lower thing and wants to elevate you. Nope. Salad is salad.
Yeah.
Their soup bowl is a soup bowl.
Yep.
That's it.
And watch yourself too, not morally judging others and what they're eating.
Mm-hmm. And the way you correct that, when you're going to judge others, right? Catch it and be like, oh yeah, forgot. Totally forgot. Yeah. A sandwich is a sandwich, right? Yeah. So yeah, cookie is a cookie. And this works. It neutralizes the energy. It shows your brain the neutrality of what you're consuming and of what you're seeing. And when you feel neutral around it, you don't feel guilty. It's amazing. We just had a client 3 weeks ago or so tell us that last year in her work, she's like, I lost 10 pounds of guilt, and said, couldn't believe what that means with her interaction with food. Mm-hmm. And we drop the guilt. Do you know what's so fascinating? We use the guilt as a motivator to be good. When we drop the guilt, we make way more conscious decisions that serve us. And yes, that serve us on a nutritional side, but also even when we're choosing to partake of the pleasurable things, we're more mindful of it because we're not outrunning the guilt. We're not feeling like we're sneaking one by. It's just all neutral and all good.
Right. Yep. It's awesome. I love it.
Friends.
Cake is just cake.
Yep.
Salad is just salad. That's you can quote us.
Feel free to quote us. It's genius.
You have permission.
But yes, friends, listen, guilt is not a natural function of like how we were designed to interact with food. It really does nothing to benefit the human body. If you just look back at your own life and see the role that guilt has played in your interactions with food, if you take an honest look, you will see that the guilt has actually perpetuated behaviors that you wish you could improve. So we're not here saying you might want to improve some of the choices. You might want to prioritize things differently. All of that is valid, but why not do it from a completely guilt-free place? That's our wish for you. That's what we know is possible for you. And it is just as simple as changing the mindset to that neutral place and refusing to feel guilty around food. That's going to change anything. Even before you ever change your diet, you can change how you can drop the guilt of however you're eating right now.
Absolutely.
Do it. Okay.
Do it. You won't regret it.
Thanks.
All
Take
right.
care, everyone.
See you all later.